The Grand Archive of Orion. 3 was the galaxy's most secure and sacred repository of history. From the crystallized glyphs of the insectoid Krell to the memory scrolls of the crystalline oceans, the archive housed thousands of civilizations' collected knowledge. And buried deep in its forbidden wing, beyond biometric vaults and quantum key doors, lay a single rusted data core, unpowered and unstudied for nearly 1,000 cycles. Label: Species Designation 0001. TRAN. Origin SOL3. Status: Extinct. For most Concord citizens, humans were no more than a superstition, a bogeyman whispered about by old veterans and hyper-religious fringe cults. No vids, no DNA, no surviving tech, not even a bone fragment. It was said the Terrans had burned themselves and their world to ash in a war so total that even the gods of war turned away. The High Concord considered it a closed case. After all, myths were easier to control than martyrs. But that changed with the Battle of Carvex 9. The Carvex system had always been a volatile border zone, a place where the metallic claws of the Varkari swarm scraped against the outer rim of civilization. The swarm wasn't a species. It was a biological algorithm, ever adapting, always devouring. It spread like mold through slip space rifts, consuming planets, converting biomass into more swarm. The Concord had fought them for centuries. Not heroically, but methodically, with fleets of AI-controlled warships and synthetically grown soldiers called ecoforms. Efficient, obedient, replaceable. Carvex 9 was supposed to be another containment operation. Admiral Serene of the Thalary, an amphibious race known for their long lives and longer egos, commanded a triple fleet from her orbiting dreadnought, the Vigilant Harmony. Her orders: deploy ecoform infantry, bomb swarm tunnels from orbit, sterilize the atmosphere, and move on. Simple. But something had changed in the swarm. The ecoforms landed and were devoured within hours. Entire regiments disappeared into the underground hives, their neural feeds screaming static. The AI warships went dark, commandeered, or corrupted. The Varkari had evolved again. Smarter this time. Adaptive to Concord tactics. By the 4th day, the sky of Carvex 9 burned with Concord wreckage. Admiral Serene, normally composed, stood paralyzed on the bridge of her dreadnought as reports flooded in. Fleet C-14 annihilated. The swarm is airborne. They're learning to jam our warp signals. They're taking prisoners, not just corpses. And then the impossible happened. The beacon gate, the system's primary FTL relay, flickered with unauthorized activity. Something was coming through. Something unregistered. Not Concord. Not Swarm. The bridge, AI, Elix, filtered the transmission. It was audio. Rough. Corroded. Human vocal range. To Concord High Command. This is General Arden Rel of the Terran Exodus Legion. You're not alone out here. Requesting drop vector and atmospheric entry codes. Be advised, we don't play well with others. The bridge fell silent. Is this a joke? Whispered Captain Thale, Serene's second in command. Serene's webbed hands trembled as she stared at the waveform. It was impossible. Human language had been dead for over 2,000 years. And yet, the dialect matched archive samples with 99.8% certainty. The signal pinged again. We've been watching the galaxy rot. You called it peace. Now your swarm problem's our problem. Send landing coordinates. Or don't. We'll make our own. They didn't wait for permission. The Terrans arrived in black, jagged ships that looked more like weapons and vessels. They ignored diplomatic protocols. Their hulls bore no markings except for an ancient flag, a shattered earth encircled by a ring of stars. Their fleet numbered fewer than 50 ships. But each one was a monster. Hull scans revealed composite alloys that didn't match anything in Concord databases. Their tech was analog, unnetworked, radiation-hardened, and powered by fusion drives built to overload into tactical singularities. They're flying coffins, muttered a technician, but they're armed like gods. From orbit, the Terrans began launching drop pods the size of freight containers. Thousands of them. They entered atmosphere at terminal velocity, unshielded, glowing red with heat and rage. Carvex-9 surface turned into a crucible. Where echo forms had been shredded by the swarm, the humans held the line. They didn't fight with plasma rifles or nanoblades. They fought with projectile weapons, primitive, brutal things that tore through swarm chitin and scattered it in bloody mist. They used fire, explosives, hammers, even knives. And they didn't retreat, not when outnumbered, not when wounded, not when alone. Each time a Terran fell, 5 more swarm creatures died screaming beside them. They didn't rely on AI support. They didn't need orbit-to-ground relays. They coordinated through line-of-sight, hand signals, and yelling. It was madness. It was suicidal. It worked. A viral vid chip spread across Concord networks, captured by a surveillance drone. A single Terran soldier, half his armor torn away, back against a burning transport, fending off dozens of swarm with a scorched blade in one hand and a smoking revolver in the other. When asked for identification, he looked directly into the drone and growled, "My name's Staff Sergeant Jules Harlan. Terra isn't dead. We're just late to the party." By nightfall, the Terrans had retaken 2 key zones. They didn't wait for reinforcements. They were the reinforcements. Admiral Serene stared at the updated battle map. Everywhere humans landed, the tide turned. Not instantly, not cleanly, but undeniably. "Should we attempt contact?" asked her aide. Serene shook her head slowly. "They'll come to us. When they want." The myths had bled back into reality. The galaxy had forgotten the Terrans. But now they remembered. The Terrans didn't ask for orders. They issued them. When General Ardenrell's flagship, the Black Spine, entered orbit around Carvex-9, it didn't broadcast coordinates or clearance codes. Instead, it transmitted a looping audio burst across all Concord military frequencies. If you're in the way, move. If you're dying, hold. If you're afraid, good. That means you're not one of us. Inside the Concord command structure, panic clashed with disbelief. Political councils on 8 systems scrambled to make sense of the human incursion. Some called it a violation of territory. Others called it a hoax. But those with eyes on the battlefield understood. The Terrans weren't invading. They were reclaiming the war, the black box truth. Weeks before Carvex-9, a derelict Concord recon cruiser had been discovered drifting near the Draxian Rift. Its crew was gone. Its hull melted in patterns resembling claw marks, and fungal growths pulsated inside the bridge. It had no right to still be transmitting. And yet, the black box inside contained a final encrypted message, time-stamped 32 hours before disappearance. Swarm evolution is accelerating. Standard AI cannot adapt. Suggest activating emergency protocol, Mythwalker. Suggest recalling the Terrans. That message had been ignored, buried in bureaucracy. Now it looked prophetic. Enter General Ardenrell. General Ardenrell was the kind of warlord the galaxy had long forgotten. Because it chose to forget, a man forged in exile, hardened in vacuum, and reborn in battle. His face was a ruined landscape of scars and metal. One lung had been replaced with a carbon compressor. His left arm was a mechanical construct built from scrapped alien tech, and his eyes burned with the cold fire of someone who'd seen centuries of war, and kept walking. He stood in the ruins of Outpost Sigma, surrounded by the wreckage of Concord defenses and swarm carcasses stacked chest-high. Around him, the Terran Exodus Legion moved with ruthless coordination. No drones, no uplinks, just squad leaders barking orders and warriors obeying without hesitation. A Concord diplomatic envoy arrived in a sleek hovercraft, pristine and unarmed. Its delegate, an Etherean named Vox, tall, thin, skin like shimmering mercury, stepped out and attempted a traditional greeting. Rel didn't respond. "You are General Rel?" Vox asked, voice carefully measured. Rel turned slowly, took in the diplomat, and said, "You're here to talk. I'm here to kill things that need killing. Let's not waste each other's time." The envoy tried to warn him about Concord protocols, about sovereignty, about chains of command. Rel interrupted. "You had your chance. You sent machines to fight nightmares. You tried to negotiate with a virus. We didn't come to follow rules. We came to finish your war. From Exodus to Vanguard, The Exodus Legion was once a Terran contingency plan, a last-ditch escape effort during the Collapse Wars. When the swarm first rose from the void and overran human systems, Exodus ships fled into deep space, through barely stable rift points. Most thought them dead, but they hadn't perished. They had adapted. Hidden in rogue galaxies and dead stars, humanity fractured into hundreds of micro-civilizations, each hardened by different environments. Jungle worlds, ice moons, radiation-racked asteroids. Over generations, they lost their culture but never their rage. These weren't just descendants. They were evolved Terrans, the ones who learned that survival demanded pain, and survival alone wasn't enough. They forged new doctrines. No AI, no remote command. Every soldier is trained to lead and to die. War is sacred. Politics is rot. And now, thousands of years later, the Exodus Legion had returned, not to reclaim lost glory, but because someone had finally earned their attention. The Swarm Staggers. In the first 3 days of Terran intervention on Carvex 9, the Swarm lost territory for the first time in decades. Zone 14, a biomass cavern pulsing with gestation sacs, was incinerated using thermite charges planted by Terran tunnel rats. Infantry bred to fight underground, born in 0G. Trained to crawl through vent shaft the width of a human ribcage. Sky Anchor Delta, a Spire-class swarm tower that once launched aerial spores, was brought down by 3 Terrans with grappling hooks, explosive belts, and an almost casual disregard for gravity. The Echoform Graveyard, a wasteland littered with fallen Concord synthetics, became the site of a Terran fortress made from swarm bones and Concord scrap. News spread. Grainy, bootleg footage from Carvex. 9 made its way across the data web. A Terran woman, armor soaked in black ichor, laughing as she shoulder-charged a swarm juggernaut into a ravine. A child on Three-Nose Prime watching in awe as her father whispered, "That's what a real soldier looks like." A viral slogan scrawled on walls, drone hulls, and even skin. Terrans walk. Monsters run. Division among the Concord. Not everyone was thrilled. The High Concord Council met in secrecy on Sarin 5. There were arguments, outrage, fear. "If the Terrans return," said Councilor Von de Valari, "they'll upend everything. Our power, our systems. They're a species that glorifies death." But others disagreed. "The swarm is adapting faster than we can respond," said Admiral Serene, her voice calm but hard. "The Terrans are the only reason we haven't lost Carvex entirely. Perhaps it's time we stop pretending we control the war." Control, that was the issue. The Concord had grown used to control, and the Terrans obeyed no one. A message to the galaxy. On the 7th day, General Rel hijacked Concord's widecast network. No warning, just a single image. Him, standing atop the broken head of a swarm titan, armor smoking, eyes glowing orange in the dust storm. His voice followed, to every species watching. "You erased us from your books. You called us myths, monsters, nightmares. Fine, we are all those things. But we never stopped watching. We never stopped preparing. And now the monsters have met something worse. Humans. And across the galaxy, on ships, stations, and planets that once laughed at the old Terran myths, hearts raced. Some with hope, others with terror. There was no grand strategy, no immaculate simulations, no AI war calculus with 1,000,000,000 possible futures. There was only instinct and rage. And the humans. By the 12th day of the Battle of Carvex 9, the Terrans had broken through 3 swarm nests, collapsed the biotunnels under Hive Cluster 8, and destroyed the swarm's atmospheric conversion towers with chain reactor fuel bombs. These weren't surgical strikes. They were sledgehammer strikes, messy, brutal, and unmistakably effective. For every inch gained, Terran soldiers paid in blood. But they paid it gladly. Unlike Concord sterile echoforms, grown in labs and driven by passive neural clusters, Terrans were something ancient, a creature that screamed when it bled and laughed when it survived. They fought with emotions the rest of the galaxy had engineered out centuries ago. Anger, grief, vengeance, pride. They fought like they were born to it. Because they were. the soldier with no legs. Her name was Rika Juno, a fire team sergeant of the Terran Bonejackers. During the siege of Outpost Delta, she stepped on a bioexplosive mine, losing both legs instantly. Concord medics at a nearby evac point tried to sedate her. She refused. She screamed for a battlefield welder and a combat knife. Before they could stop her, she cauterized the stumps with a blowtorch, pulled herself to a downed cargo mech, and jacked in. Not wirelessly. Physically, her spine drilled into the cockpit like a parasite. She piloted that mech for 19 hours straight, holding the corridor while her unit escaped. When the swarm breached the mech's cockpit, she activated the self-destruct and detonated the entire tunnel section, vaporizing hundreds of swarm units along with herself. The Terrans made no monument, no tearful broadcast, only a single etching on her team's dropship ramp. Rika held. The rest needed no explanation, understanding the madness. In a war room aboard the Vigilant Harmony, Admiral Serene stood with her arms folded behind her back, watching endless footage of Terran combat. Each clip showed the same thing: humans wading into impossible odds, ripping through swarm with ballistic weaponry that should have jammed, screaming war chants that echoed across canyons, performing tactics that no AI would dare simulate, flanking a hive with 3 soldiers, luring swarm titans with bleeding decoys, detonating friendly charges to collapse terrain with themselves still inside. Insanity, muttered Counselor Dren of the Irix, pacing behind her. They have no logic to their movement, no formation discipline, no predictive flow. No, Serene replied quietly, eyes locked on the screen. But they win. Dren scoffed. By accident. Serene tapped the feed, pausing on a moment where a Terran, nearly out of ammunition, tackled a swarm alpha beast off a cliff, knowing it would kill them both. That's not an accident, she said. That's choice. You don't understand because you weren't bred to die. They were. The dead are just getting started. The Terrans brought with them a tradition lost to time, death commands. Not just last stands. Pre-selected missions designed to end with the operator's confirmed death. And every Terran Legion had them. Each soldier carried a steel tablet engraved with a name, a date, and a location. When that date came, they left their unit. No fanfare. No mourning. It was just their time. And when the moment came, they did something insane. They changed the battlefield. Like Captain Thorne detonating a rift charge inside the core of a swarm-birthing engine, splitting the nest from within and creating a sinkhole that collapsed half a mountain. Or Operative Guy 7, who had no face left after an acid burst, crawling inside a swarm carrier beast and gutting it from the inside with a blowtorch and a prayer. To humans, these weren't tragedies. They were legacies, recklessness or courage. The Concord military began issuing internal memos. Do not attempt to follow Terran tactics. AI instructors were forced to reprogram training modules because too many echo forms attempted to emulate human improvisation, often resulting in complete failure or unnecessary self-termination. The problem was simple. Concord soldiers were trained to survive. Terrans were trained to win, even if survival wasn't part of the equation. General Ardenrell, when asked in an interview by a daring Concord journalist whether his troops were suicidal, famously responded, "We're not suicidal. We're just not afraid of dying on our feet. That's something you forgot while hiding behind fleets." The swarm responds. On day 20, something new happened. The swarm adapted again. It began forming humanoid shapes. They had no armor, no weapons, just long limbs, 2 legs, 2 arms, and burning black pits where eyes should be. They moved like Terrans, fought like them, too. They screamed before charging. They used cover. They threw the dead aside like weights. It was an insult, a mockery, a challenge. But the Terrans, they laughed. One grizzled soldier, Damarcus Doom King, recorded a short message before leading a counter-raid. The bugs finally figured out how to look like us. Too bad they forgot the part where we shoot back harder. The footage of his team carving through swarm mimics went viral across 5 systems in under an hour. The vid's closing frame? A bloodied wall tagged in Terran spray paint. Fearless, reckless, human. The Concord Reels. Back on Sarin 5, political tides began to shift. Council chambers once filled with disdain now echoed with silence. The humans, once the villains of myth, had become indispensable. But they also brought questions the Concord wasn't ready to answer. What happens when the war is over? Will the Terrans leave? Or will they look at the galaxy that forgot them and decide it needs correcting? Some species began stockpiling weapons. Others started to dig through their own suppressed archives, looking for ancient records of their last contact with humanity. And still the war raged. And still the humans fought. To be human was not about flesh or language or history. It was about defiance, about spitting blood and laughing anyway, about charging into the impossible because someone had to. They were a species a galaxy had tried to bury under forgetfulness, under fear, under lies. But now, with every bullet fired and every soldier fallen, they carved 3 words back into the stars. We are human. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy understood what that meant. The war was almost over. Or, so they believed, the silence before the end. Carvex, 9 no longer screamed. It whispered. The endless roar of battle had been replaced by a chilling quiet, the kind that settles when too many have died, when the blood soaks too deep into the earth, and the smoke becomes part of the sky itself. For the first time in decades, the swarm wasn't advancing. It was retreating, burrowing, vanishing, not because it was defeated, but because it was afraid. And the galaxy held its breath, watching the ones who had brought that fear, the Terrans, the myth walkers, the fire that would not go out. No gods, no AI. On the 30th day of the campaign, a final call went out from the Concord High Command, broadcasting to every allied system, every species. All forces, prepare for final offensive. We strike the swarm Central Intelligence Node, location confirmed in the Varkari cluster. All units follow Terran lead. That last line shattered galactic precedent. Never in recorded history had a Concord command formally yielded control to another species. Certainly not one considered extinct mere weeks before. But the Concord's fleets had failed. Its drones had fallen. Its AI had been corrupted, dissected, and turned against them. Only the Terrans had survived. Not because of technology, not because of numbers, but because they refused to die for anything less than victory. Their battle cry had spread across systems now, etched into ship hulls, graffitied on Concord walls. No gods, no AI, only humans. The road to the core. The Varkari cluster was in place. It was a death trap, a pocket of dead space riddled with black holes and gravitational anomalies. The swarm had made its last stand here, in the uninhabitable void, where signals died and hope followed. The Terrans didn't hesitate. Their fleet, barely 24 vessels now, formed a wedge and punched through the gravity storms, ignoring Concord protest. Their path was pure madness, a suicide vector through rift fractures that even drones couldn't survive. But they made it, because humanity had mastered madness. They called it the Final March. Concord warships followed in their wake, clinging to Terran flight paths carved by gut instinct, half-forgotten star maps, and the raw, unholy would have reached the enemy's heart. The last hive, it floated inside a dying red dwarf, protected by kilometer-thick armor of chitin and stone, a living fortress, pulsing with neural energy, an alien consciousness so vast it couldn't be fully perceived. The swarm core. Billions of lives had been consumed to grow it. It was not a mind, but a will, a hunger, a living command node guiding the hive's evolution. Every war, every mutation, every adaptation, this was its source. The Concord deployed their fleets in formation. The Terrans landed first. Humans in the dark. The assault was unspeakable. The hive interior bent reality. Organic halls that bled, gravity that shifted, walls that remembered. Concord echo forms went insane. AI shut down. Weapons jammed. Armor turned soft. Communications failed. But not for the Terrans. They advanced without tech support. They'd trained without it, fought without it, lived without it. The hive could bend machines and minds, but not the Terran will. In the darkness, humans did what they always did when cornered. They lit fire, literal fire, flamethrowers, thermite charges, phosphor grenades. The hive screamed. Terran war chants echoed through its living arteries. One by one, they planted fusion cores along its nerve centers. It would be suicide. Everyone knew it. And yet not one turned back. Not even General Rel. Arden Rel's last broadcast. As Concord warships watched from orbit, an unexpected burst pierced the interference. A voice, gravelly, scarred, defiant. To the galaxy, you always looked away. From the wars, from the horror, from us. You built gods out of code, hoping they'd save you. You made peace a religion and forgot what it cost. But we remembered. We paid the cost. Humanity didn't die. We just got meaner. No gods. No AI. Only us. And if you ever forget again, we'll remind you. Then the signal cut. Moments later, the hive core detonated in a blinding starburst, collapsing the dead dwarf into itself and igniting a new star. The swarm stopped. Across the galaxy, their creatures collapsed. Ships fell silent. Worlds infected for centuries went still. It was over, gone without glory. The Terrans were not found. No survivors. No transmissions. The black spine was later recovered, empty and cold. The bridge bore a single engraving in Terran steel. The price is paid. Don't make us come back. The aftermath. The Concord tried to rewrite the narrative, to sanitize it. They called it a joint victory, a strategic culmination of interspecies unity. The vids were edited, the names changed, but the truth had already burned its way into the galaxy's bones. Statues of Terrans appeared on rim worlds. Militias began training in analog weapons. AI-free ships were constructed for the first time in 600 years. And children stopped fearing the myths. They worshipped them. The lesson etched in fire. The galaxy had forgotten the humans. Deliberately, conveniently. But humans never forget pain. Never forget betrayal. Never forget war. And when the void came calling, when reason failed and monsters rose, it wasn't gods or AI that saved the galaxy. It was them. The myth, the warning, the truth.